Wizards with invisible superpowers, extremely overcomplicated abilities, and good-natured main characters that punch very hard and become darker as the series goes on. It's no secret that Gege Akutami was heavily inspired by Hunter x Hunter in writing Jujutsu Kaisen, but the same cannot be said for the way they write their villains. The representation of evil, Ryomen Sukuna, versus the evolving and compassionate Meruem, the king of curses and the king of ants. In this video, I'll be going over their stats, skills, and abilities and discussing who the true king really is. If you guys enjoy Hunter x Hunter or JJK content like this, then please like the video so I know to make more content like this, and subscribe to see when they come out. It genuinely does mean a lot and support what I'm doing. There will be very limited manga spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen here, but I promise to avoid anything major, and I'll try to word things in a way that won't give anything away. So if something sounds a little off to you manga readers, this is why. Scaling Hunter x Hunter can usually get a bit complicated, but thankfully, Meruem's strength can be scaled with a few feats and statements. For this video, we will be using Meruem at his absolute peak, which is after his revival from being nuked by the miniature Rose nuclear bomb. Rose Meruem, right after being revived by his two henchmen, tests his new powers. He launches a Rage Blast, which vaporizes a nearby rock formation. This explosion has been consistently calculated to be around 500 megatons of TNT, or mountain level. This feat is consistent with statements, since shortly thereafter, Meruem unleashes his aura and bloodlust within his palace, and it's so powerful it convinces Knuckle that they need a state's military to even oppose him. This would make a lot of sense since the Rose Bomb, which is considered a small bomb, has been calculated to yield at least a couple megatons of TNT, and in real life, we were able to make 50 megaton bombs back in the 60s. For speed, Meruem base should easily scale above Pito, who moments after birth jumped a great distance so quickly that Gon and Killua couldn't even see her move. This feat has been calculated to Mach 108, but I'd argue this is lowballed since it uses normal human perception for Gon and Killua, when we've already seen them blitz people way faster than any human alive. Pito is able to double this speed when they try even harder to save Meruem from Netero, putting Pito's top speed in base at over Mach 216. Meruem has already been shown blitzing each member of the Royal Guard, and later completely perception blitzing both Knuckle and Melioron at the same time, people who could at least do battle with Yuppie. When Netero and Zeno were distracted for a split second, Meruem was able to move so quickly that the two basically immediately accepted death, when Netero was able to have an entire conversation before Pitou could even launch a single attack in her full power state. You could also scale Meruem far above the likes of the speed of lightning when you consider Killua transmuting his aura into lightning and basically infusing it into his body. Yet adult Gon, who more or less rivals base Meruem, was so fast Killua barely had time to blink. Yuppie himself implies he should at least be able to react to lightning when he has decent enough time to react. Killua also just throws lightning bolts around and is able to move at a respectable fraction of their speed, even early in the Chimera Ant arc. This is consistent with P2 calculation, since Meruem should easily be over Mach 216 at least, with the speed of lightning being around Mach 1200. Some to this day still believe Hunter x Hunter caps at Prime Netero being supersonic, but completely ignore the fact that Netero surpassed the speed of sound. The statement says that he left sound in his wake, not that he had just barely reached it. It's also implied that Netero continued his training after the fact, so he could have gone even faster. Overall, it's more consistent for the speed of sound being pretty low tier, with Kurapika precisely catching multiple handgun bullets, all of the Phantom Troop being able to react to Uvogen's supersonic scream, Chitu easily dodging bullets a few centimeters from his face. The list goes on and on. At worst, you can chalk the Netero statement to being an outlier, since massively hypersonic is far more consistent for Meruem. In terms of abilities, Meruem has all the basic abilities of Nen, which it's implied he knew all of them upon birth. Most of these are basic, such as focusing aura in his fist, but also has an ability called N, which lets Meruem expand his Nen by hundreds of meters at the speed of light to sense and detect everything within its range. In his base state, Meruem didn't really make use of any abilities outside of basic hand-to-hand combat, but in his Rose transformation, he displays many of the abilities he acquired and evolved from his henchmen. Of course, Meruem has Youpi's Rage Blast, which is basically a big energy beam, but also his ability to shapeshift his body. Meruem only showed this ability by growing wings to fly to the palace, but if he has better control over it than Youpi did, he can also grow extra limbs, eyeballs, enlarge his arm's muscle mass, grow a swarm of tentacles, and possibly much more. He also took Poof's spiritual message, or the ability to read people's emotions, to psychoanalyze them in battle. Meruem refined this power to the point it works on anyone who touched his N, but he eventually evolved this ability even further by transforming his aura into photons that could absorb any form of data, from physical information to emotions. He might also have Poof's ability to spread scales that induce a hypnotic effect, or his ability to split down into microscopic particles. Again, we didn't see him use these abilities, but he never really needed to. In the context of the series, he's basically invincible at this point, so he wouldn't really need to use these powers. Arguably, Meruem's most valuable weapon is his incredible combat IQ. Upon birth, he pretty much became the best chess, Go, and shogi player in the whole world. His ability to read his opponents became heightened against Komugi, the Gungi world champion, where Meruem is shown pondering possibly dozens of strategies at the same time after Komugi makes a single move. Against Netero, who is so insanely smart he can precisely guess what Morel will say on some Joseph Joestar energy, Meruem sees through thousands of different attack combinations by attacking from all angles endlessly, and gets past Netero's Guanyin defense not once, but twice. That sums up Meruem. Now we can go over the King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna. Just like Meruem, we will be taking Sukuna at his peak of power, which is his full strength in the Heian period. I am aware Sukuna technically got a power-up in the manga, but for the anime onlys, we won't include that power-up. We can pretty easily scale Sukuna far above the special great disaster spirits, Jogo and Dagon. Both characters are able to use their domain expansions to create massive landscapes, Dagon's being calculated around 100 megatons, and Jogo's over 2.5 gigatons of TNT, or between mountain to large mountain level. Not only did Sukuna dominate Jogo when they fought base to base, but by Jogo's own admission, if they got into a domain battle, Sukuna would easily crush him. Jogo on a good day being compared to less than half of Sukuna's power. He then fights someone on par with Toji Zenin, and Toji is capable of exercising Dagon within his own domain. Some don't believe you can scale these creation feats to the actual strength of the user for a multitude of reasons. One being the fact that domains on the outside are incredibly small. However, this doesn't diminish the size of the domain within itself, as we have seen Gojo, Jogo, and Dagon all create domains smaller than a room, yet has more than enough room to jump around and be launched past the horizon. The other issue people have is it's a creation feat, not a destruction feat. However, you have to ask yourself, what is the point of creating this landscape if the offensive benefits don't outweigh the costs? Domain expansion uses up a lot of cursed energy to the point that most people except Gojo and Sukuna can't even use it more than once in a single day. So why would Jogo exhaust over half of his pool of cursed energy creating it if it didn't allow him to output that much force as well? With that in mind, it's very safe to say that Sukuna at full power with Domain can output well over 2.5 gigatons of TNT, with his basic attacks probably at least being stronger than Dagon's 100 megaton range. This is consistent with Gojo being stated able to power the entire United States with his cursed energy, and for him to do so for just a couple of months to a year would require several gigatons of TNT as well. Speed for JJK is just as convoluted as in Hunter x Hunter, if not more so. On the one hand, we have characters like early Maki, Yuji, and Teen Ghetto easily reacting to various firearms, with Maki specifically calculated being Mach 20 to 30. On the other hand, we have Maki after multiple amps blitzed by Mach 3 movement speed, Yuji struggling to react to something around the speed of sound, and Naoya easily blitzing Yuji with subsonic speed. The issue comes down to statements versus feats, in which you almost always go with feats. The statements themselves aren't even consistent, since Yuji in Shibuya could dodge a speed of sound piercing blood, but when he's stronger after Shibuya, neither he or Choso can react to subsonic Naoya. Therefore, we'll be going with the more consistent feats like we did with Hunter x Hunter. We can actually scale Sukuna to Hikari Kinji, the mysterious third year who fights a sorcerer from the past who's able to slingshot lightning bolts named Kashimo. Hikari can react to this from point blank range, was calculated over Mach 500. We can scale Sukuna higher, seeing as Kenjaku believes Sukuna would at least be able to fare well against Gojo, and Gojo believing the same thing, with Gojo confirmed the strongest sorcerer of the present. Sukuna is also stated several times the strongest of the past, above Kashimo, who controls lightning, and lightning itself being Mach 1200. In terms of abilities, Sukuna has pretty much the most advanced mastery over cursed energy in the entire series. His feat of creating an open domain without a barrier was considered impossible by all the top tier sorcerers as a divine and godlike technique. On top of that, he has over double Yuta Okotsu's sheer cursed energy amount. Someone repeatedly stated to have a boundless cursed energy and is able to have cursed energy surging around his body at all times, making it impossible to predict. Sukuna's cursed techniques are incredibly simple yet useful. His most basic attack is Dismantle, which is his generic cutting attack, which he usually uses for low-level opponents or on objects. Cleave is another cutting attack, but one he adjusts the potency of to allow him to cut them down with a single attack. We've also seen him incorporate this ability into his hand-to-hand skill to disrupt his opponent's footing and create openings. He also has some mysterious fire arrow technique that he used to destroy Jogo, whose whole existence revolves around fire. Sukuna's most powerful attack is of course his domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine. Domains, which are considered the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery, amplifies Sukuna's raw stats, ensures all of his attacks land, a guaranteed hit, and goes to town on everything in the immediate surroundings up to 200 meters. His hand-to-hand skill is good enough to outbox Yuji, a proficient martial artist who fights 100-year-old curses with nothing but his bare hands, and a Toji tier fighter, someone hailed as a god of combat. He can use reversed curse technique to heal entire arms. Sukuna is able to analyze and dissect pretty much any cursed technique after seeing it a single time, and copy many abilities as well. Now that we've gone over the stats and abilities, it's time to determine who is the strongest, Meruem or Sukuna. Meruem's absolute best feat comes out at around 500 megatons of TNT. This was just a test of his new powers, so it's possible he could be even stronger, but as we'll see, it really doesn't matter. The reason it doesn't matter is because even Jogo's domain outputs over 2.5 gigatons of TNT, or 5 times stronger than Meruem's blast. Sukuna is then blatantly far stronger than Jogo by at least over 2 times. Even Sukuna's base physical abilities or his normal cleave and dismantles should exceed or be relative to Dagon's 100 megaton domain expansion thanks to Toji. Speed is a lot closer, but still favors Sukuna. Meruem far outscaling Pitu's Mach 200, and Sukuna being at least relative to Hikari's Mach 500, with both possibly scaling around or slightly above the speed of lightning. Honestly, it's pretty astounding that in terms of raw stats, Meruem and Sukuna are this close. The fact that the gap is just about 10 times, it's actually pretty close when you look at the other matchups I've covered. And most matchups you'll see across YouTube, which usually have characters being dozens to thousands of times stronger and faster than their opponent. In a fight, Meruem would probably immediately rush into close quarters combat and get his hands dirty. If Meruem does this, Sukuna should be able to overwhelm him with superior physical ability, plus far better combat skill in hand-to-hand. While Meruem could outsmart Netero, the genius martial artist, he didn't exactly outskill him hand-to-hand, just saw through his moves after thousands of attacks. Perhaps Meruem could use his huge brain to see through Sukuna's moves, but Sukuna at standard should just be much better close quarters fighter, and unlike with Netero, landing a single hit on Sukuna won't be enough to end the fight. The only way Meruem could maybe get an edge in close quarters is if you believe he has the full extent of Yuppie's body manipulation ability. I don't think this is a huge leap in logic, but it's not confirmed either. Sukuna also has 4 arms in his prime and is as tall as the Hulk, giving him a huge reach advantage over Meruem, at least if he doesn't shapeshift. An alternate way Meruem could open the fight is with his Speed of Light N, or Photon's ability, which would blitz Sukuna. Although this ability can't do any damage, it would let Meruem know pretty much everything there is to know about Sukuna, from his emotional state to physical attributes, possibly even abilities. If he can determine his abilities, he may be able to make up a plan with his insane battle IQ, which is more than likely better than Sukuna's. Sukuna, while extremely intelligent, more so comes from his understanding of cursed energy rather than raw planning. As an example, if you put Sukuna's brain inside Meruem's body and forced him to fight Netero, would Sukuna be able to see through Netero's moves, or would he find some way to disable or negate Netero's Guanyin? To be fair, we've only really seen Sukuna fight against extremely hacked abilities like adaptation, which you can't really beat with 2 hands and a big brain. But the point still stands. In terms of what's been shown, Meruem has much better intelligence feats. The question is though, is there anything he could do? And the answer is probably not much. While Meruem does have an arsenal of top tier Nen abilities, the most troublesome abilities for Meruem to get around are Reversed Curse Technique and Malevolent Shrine. Meruem would need to either completely destroy Sukuna with 1 attack, destroy his head, or outlast him of all his cursed energy. Seeing Sukuna has rivaling if not superior raw power to Meruem, destroying him with a single attack is not very likely. Going for Sukuna's head is a more feasible goal, but again, the same more or less applies. It would be equally easy for Sukuna to rip off Meruem's head, if not easier since his whole ability is cutting. Outlasting Sukuna is possible since Sukuna doesn't exactly have any feats putting him in the multiple days of stamina range. Even lower tier characters like Gon and Killua have been implied to fight non-stop for multiple days against Beanolt, and Meruem's aura should be far above theirs, as well as playing board games for 3 days straight. In comparison, the best stamina feat in Jujutsu Kaisen is Hikari and Yuta fighting for a couple of minutes and almost hitting their limit. However, Sukuna would never let it get that far. If Sukuna suspected that Meruem was trying to draw out the fight to exhaust him, he'd no doubt go for his domain. Within his domain, he'd be hitting Meruem with a constant barrage of cleave that is completely unavoidable. The only way for Meruem to escape is to escape the 200-meter range of his domain, but Sukuna with rivaling speed would more than likely be able to intercept and jump him with hand-to-hand on top of his domain. There's pretty much no chance Meruem has to win. Meruem also has the ability to become stronger by eating strong people and learning their abilities. However, Sukuna's very being is extremely poisonous that kills basically everyone that consumes even a single finger. Yuji basically became immune to every other poison in the verse just by having Sukuna inside of him. While Meruem doesn't explicitly have a weakness to poison, he hasn't shown resistance to it and was ultimately defeated by poison. Hypothetically, even if you said Meruem could split himself down into subatomic particles the way Poof does, we know that his real body would still have to be much larger than that, and regardless of size, Sukuna's domain would be guaranteed to hit Meruem. With his body split apart and his durability much lower, it may honestly be an even faster GG for Sukuna. Even if somehow Meruem could survive Sukuna's domain expansion once, in his recent fight in the manga, Sukuna was able to use his domain 4 times in a row before suffering any serious backlash. Let's just be realistic. Is Meruem going to survive 4 or more domain expansions, each over 5 times stronger than Meruem himself, while dealing with Sukuna in hand-to-hand, while Sukuna is regenerating from everything Meruem hits him with? It's not very likely. In the end, Sukuna's domain plus superior hand-to-hand skill is something that Meruem just can't really deal with. I hope you guys enjoyed the video as always, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
You think you're the king? I'm the king!